Okay. And so basically, they get into debt from the time that they're really young, right? And so they get into student loans, they get into a car loan, eventually they get into credit cards, and eventually when they buy a home, they get into a mortgage. And so as time goes by, most people get into debt further and further into debt and have no idea how to get out. This starts to cause people to live in stress and anxiety over money, right? People work really hard. People are tired at the end of every day, and yet every week and every month it feels like the same thing, like there's never enough money. And it starts to cause a wear down on people's body, people's stress levels, and eventually into people's relationship, right? A lot of people end up getting divorced over the subject of money. In fact, I believe money is like one of the top reasons why people get divorced. Once people start having kids, they start stressing out about how am I going to pay for my kids' college education. Other people start worrying about, well, am I going to have enough money to retire? And a lot of people start putting money away into their company's 401k or IRA plan. A lot of people come to my seminars because they are stressed out about their debt, right? So like, how am I going to pay all these debts? How can I get out of these credit cards? Some people, they're concerned, well, what happens if something happens to me? Who's going to take care of my family? And so for most people, the solution is often they think, well, I just need to make more money, right? So a lot of people start getting into maybe buying a lottery ticket or getting a second job. Some people look at multi-level marketing opportunities. Other people think maybe the solution is to start a business, right? I get a lot of people who tell me, hey, well, I want to invest. I want to learn how to invest. And so what should I invest in? Should I invest in real estate? Should I invest in the stock market? Should I invest in Bitcoin? Should I invest in gold, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things that people want to invest in. A lot of people, one of the most popular things is to invest in the stock market, and some people do it through, a financial advisor who puts them into mutual funds. Some people try to do it themselves, but as we learned once again this year, the stock market goes up until suddenly it goes down, and when it goes down really hard. The coronavirus caused the stock market to go down, more than 30% just in 1 month, in the month of March. And right now, fortunately, it's bounced back, but there's no guarantee that it's going to stay there, right? Most people probably put their money away for the long term into a traditional retirement account. The problem is that their money access to money is limited, right? And there's no guaranteed returns. So for all you could be putting money into these accounts for the next 40 years, and by the time you need access to that money, it may not even be the amount that you thought, right? Over the last couple decades, people have thought, well, there's gurus who tell me I should invest in real estate. So people buy houses to flip. Other people buy houses to try to rent them out. And yet, there's not a whole huge amount of returns unless you're an expert or unless you have a really big portfolio. It might just end up being a lot of work. Some people come to realize that there's actually risk and losses involved in real estate, right? The most recent was people who bought homes to invest into Airbnb, and now with the virus suddenly realized nobody wanted to rent their houses, and yet they're still responsible for their mortgage, right? Other people go to the other extreme and they put their money into their bank to say, well, I'm just going to keep my money safe. The problem is that the banks don't pay you any interest, right? And yet when you want to borrow money from them, they charge you huge amounts of interest. So that's the problem. Other people, when they want to buy life insurance, they just buy whatever their friend or somebody told them to buy, right? They have no real idea what's the correct type of life insurance to buy. So some people end up just wasting tons of money buying the wrong product. So when we think about it, we kind of realize like people need money for a lot of different things, right? People will need money to take care of their past, to try to pay off debts that they incurred, maybe student loans or credit cards. And the typical solution for that, right, is a new credit card, right? Something in the mail with 0% interest. Some people will recommend debt consolidation or even bankruptcy when it gets really bad enough. Unfortunately, none of these are really good solutions. Other people need money for the present, right? We all need money to live, for food, for bills. Some people to pay their car loan or their mortgage. right? And what's a typical solution? Well, put your money in a bank. Like I said, it doesn't pay any interest. Refinance your house or something to get a lower interest rate. Learn to invest, start a business. Well, again, there's risk involved in all these things. Some people need money for the future, right? In order to save for their kids' college or for their own retirement. And they're told to use these traditional vehicles, 401k, IRA, college savings plans, 529. And some people think about eternity, right? What happens if I go prematurely? Well, I want to make sure that my family is safe. And like I said, they typically buy term insurance or whole life insurance or IUL insurance. Well, the problem is most people don't really know what to do, right? Should I pay off debts or should I invest for the future? Well, it's a stressful thing. The good news is that I'm here to try to help you out so that you can learn how to make the best decision and so that you can basically think in a structured way. Rather than staying in the pit of desperation for the rest of your life, stuck in debt, I want to tell you that there's hope, that there's actually a path that can lead you to financial freedom if you take it one step at a time, right? In some of the courses that we offer, particularly the Financial Freedom Seminar that we offer, we teach you that the number one thing you need to learn to invest in is investing in yourself, investing in your financial education. And that's the main thing, right? With the focus of getting out of debt and learning how to save, paying yourself first. Once you do that, we teach you in this course and in others that you need to learn how to become your own bank. You need to learn how to replace the traditional banks, which basically suck the life out of you, and learn how to replace them so that you keep that interest, right? As time goes by, the goal is to build up a sufficient amount of capital so that you can learn to invest in something that yields cash flow, and invest in something that's going to allow you to become financially independent and also to become a generous giver, right? So that's kind of the goal of all the classes that I teach. Now, there's 4 things that you got to focus on. Number 1, you got to focus on achieving financial education. That's what I'm here to share with you, right? But it also takes a desire for personal development. Personal development simply means that you're trying to make something better out of yourself. And it starts with having goals and dreams in life. It starts with having some purpose. It starts with having something to shoot for, right? So that's another set of classes that we teach on how you can achieve your dreams and goals in life. One of the things that's important to realize is that debt is your enemy and that you have to try to get rid of your debt ASAP, right? We can help you build a personalized, customized one-on-one plan so that you can become debt-free in a relatively short amount of time. And it requires a little bit of coaching, but once you get the hang of it, then it's just a matter of staying focused and staying on plan, right? And the last thing that we teach you is how to become your own bank, because by becoming your own bank, you can essentially accomplish a number of things, such as saving for the future, taking care of your past debts, and growing the protection for your family in case something happens to you. So that's basically the solution that I'm going to show you today, how that works in a more step-by-step manner so that you have a better idea and you can see if this is something that might work for you. The goal here is to accomplish several things at the same time. The goal is to protect your family, to start a tree of wealth, something that can grow consistently year over year, month after month, and not just be subject to volatility going up and down all the time. You need to adopt a concept called pay yourself first, which basically means putting aside an amount of money consistently every single paycheck, and that's going to be the capital that's going to help you prosper. You need to develop a plan how to become debt-free, right, in a faster way so that you stay motivated. And I'm going to show you basically how this concept can help you keep the interest that you would have otherwise paid to banks. Because the goal here is to create a legacy for the future, for your future generations, for your children, your grandchildren, something that grows tax-free and something that you can pass on, right? So my mottos here that I'd like you to adopt are dare to prosper, invest in yourself, and become your own bank. These concepts is what has helped me, get ahead in life and what has helped me pass on to other people so that they can also do it. So just really quick, what is this concept of become your own bank? We're going to discover this in more detail in the next couple of lessons, but in a nutshell, it basically consists of realizing that the banks are not your friends, right? The banks are not there to help you out. The banks are there to suck the life out of you, right? Most banks are going to charge you as high interest as you allow them to, and most banks want you to pay them interest basically month after month for the rest of your life. And so you have to basically learn how to take charge of your life and basically aim to become debt-free ASAP, right? All that money that you're giving away to the banks is money that should be going into your pocket and into your future so that you can benefit your family and so that the banks basically are no longer sucking money out of you, right? And so when you catch this concept, you're going to realize that, it's pretty powerful. All right, so let's go to section number 2. How do we become our own bank? Well, it starts with basically adopting a concept that I teach in the Financial Freedom Seminar, which I learned from this book called The Richest Man in Babylon, which was written almost 100 years ago. But in a nutshell, it's pretty simple, and yet at the same time, it's pretty profound. And yet a lot of people don't actually follow it, right? But the concept is that, give me a second. Well, I hope this thing is not bothering you. Basically, like, the concept is that out of every paycheck that you get, you have to learn how to pay yourself first. You have to learn how to set aside at least 10% so that that becomes what helps you prosper in the future. If we think about it, most people, the reason that they become poor or stay middle class is simply because they spend the majority of their money towards their current expenses, right? Or towards their past debts and expenses. They don't really save anything, right? Some people consistently get into debt. So if they make $100, they spend 101 or more. And where do they get that one? Well, they have to borrow it. Other people, they're constantly living paycheck to paycheck, spending 100% of everything they earn, and they never save for the future. The key to becoming wealthy, the key to becoming financially independent, is that you have to learn how to put away some money towards the future. At the very least, if you make 100, the most you should spend is 99, right, and save $1. But even better than that, what you should really do is when you make 100, pay yourself first $10 and then spend 90, right? That $10 is going to be the key to your financial freedom. So what do we do with those $10? What do we do with that 10%? Well, first of all, you have to make it a habit, right? You have to realize that it has to become not just something you do every now and then, but it has to become a way of life. It has to become something that is ingrained in you, that's part of your mentality, that's part of your habits, that it's something that basically you are doing consistently month after month, week after week, year after year, right? And if you do it consistently and you make it a priority, I can guarantee you that you will be financially free. So if we think about how most people spend and administer their money, so here's what happens. Imagine that this green box represents your income, right, in a paycheck. So what do you do with this money? So most people typically put it away into a checking account, right, from a bank. They have a bank checking account, and that's where the money goes. Some of the money goes towards that yellow box, which is basically their monthly bills, towards food, towards gasoline. It's basically money they're never going to see again, right? That's what we call it consumption. Consumption basically means money you will never see again. Some other part of their money goes towards their debts. Those are the red boxes there. The credit cards, their line of credit, their student loans, right? Or something that they're never going to see that money either. Some of the other money goes into their typical monthly payments of purchases that they've made. A purchase is something that maintains its value, generally speaking, like a home, so that includes your home mortgage. It could also include your car. So a lot of your money probably goes into paying off a car. And then, even then, people still want to save money, and so they spend it away into several different buckets, right? So one other buckets could be maybe towards their kids' college savings plan. Another could be towards their retirement accounts. Another could be towards, maybe their business that they're trying to start or grow. Another could be towards, a real estate property that they're trying to rent out to somebody. So the bottom line is that people's money is basically split open into many different directions, right? It's going into many different places all at the same time. And that in and of itself, that spreading out of the money is not really helping you. And here's why. If you think about it, there's really only two things that you have to kind of think about in your mind, right? You have to basically say, okay, there's only two things that I need money for. I need money for short-term wants and needs, and I need money for long-term wants and needs. Once you start to think about it that way, the first thing you ought to do that I recommend to people is that you actually get two accounts, right? So if you have two accounts, one of those accounts is going to be for your checking, for your normal spending, that you already have that one. The other account I recommend that you get, it is a separate account, could be in the same bank, just a separate account, could be a savings account, could be a checking account. The point is that that's where you're going to deposit 10% of your money at a minimum automatically as soon as you get paid every week, or whenever your paycheck is. When you start to do that, in fact, I would recommend that you automate it, right? Get with your employer and make sure that they do automatic deposit. But when you do that and you separate the money into two separate buckets, and you learn that that is money that shouldn't be touched for spending, it should only be used towards basically savings and investments, you're going to start to realize that it's a really cool concept and it's great. Now, which money could you put into that bucket? Well, pretty much right now, everything that you're putting into all these other things, like the college savings plan, your IRA money, your retirement money, money that you're putting into maybe a permanent life insurance product, money that you're putting away into the stock market, all these things, before you do that, if you would consolidate all that money and put it into the second account, you would be much better off, financially speaking. And so once you do that, I would recommend that you then make it a habit to pass that money through what I'm going to call your Wealth Heritage account. That's what we call it here, because obviously that's the name of our company, Wealth Heritage. But other people call it by other names, Bank on Yourself, or whatever name you want to call it. The point here is that if you learn to basically make your money go through this account, there's going to be several benefits that you're probably currently not seeing right this minute. So, for example, there's three things that your Wealth Heritage or your Bank on Yourself account is going to do for you. The number one thing that it's going to do for you is that it's going to provide you protection. This protection comes from a life insurance component that is part of this account, right? This account is a life insurance product, but it's not your typical life insurance product. We're going to get into that more in detail in the next lesson. But right now, I just want you to catch the concept. Number one is that this product is going to give you, or this strategy is going to give you protection, right? Protection from what? Well, protection obviously in case you pass away, so that your family is taken care of. The second thing this product is going to do for you, this strategy, is that it's going to allow you to save money, right? Capital formation is the beginning of prosperity, is the beginning of capitalism, and that's just what allows you to grow. This is what allows you to prosper, right? People who spend 100% of their money are never going to go anywhere. So the number one thing you need to realize is that all this money that you're currently dissipating into different accounts, you need to concentrate it into one place. Now, once you do that, the third thing is that that same money that you were using towards investments and towards savings can now become money that you borrow back out. So in a sense, instead of borrowing from banks, you're going to learn how to become your own best client and how to borrow money from your own account, your Wealth Heritage account. This replaces the need for you to be borrowing money from banks, right? And so your money is basically doing two things. One, it's going to be working for you on the savings side of things. And two, it's going to allow you to borrow from yourself in order to become debt-free from the banks much, much faster. So let's kind of look and see how this could work. Oh, Jesus. Okay, give me 1 second. They're telling me you're not seeing the current slide, so give me 1 second. Let's see. Let's try this again. Okay, how about now? Can you see my screen now? Might have to go back to lesson 2 at the beginning. Okay, my apologies. This, I guess this new Zoom tool hasn't been my best thing here. My apologies again. Okay, so let's kind of resume where we started off. Okay, so what I was saying is that the number 1 rule to get ahead in life is you have to learn how to pay yourself first, right? Your income has to always be your net. You always have to save at least 10%. So that means you either make more or you spend less. The goal here is to save some portion, and ideally to save 10% of your money, right? Basically, this money that you save and put away is going to be the foundation of your wealth, right? And we were saying that you have to make it a habit. I was saying that you have to basically realize that your money is going into many different places all at the same time, and that basically it would help if instead of having the money split into so many places, you only concentrated it into basically 2 places. One is your checking account, which would be used for your daily expenses. The other is your savings account, which would basically be where you concentrate all the 10% or more that you are able to save. I was saying that you are certainly able to save at least 10% or more if you're putting money away into a kid's college education fund, or if you're putting money away into your retirement accounts. What I would recommend is that you concentrate all this money, right? Put it through this account first, and concentrate it into what I would call the Wealth Heritage or Banking Yourself account first. Okay, so what I was saying is that this account has 3 functions that are going to be the primary thing for you to grasp here today. The number 1 thing is that it provides you protection in case something happens to you. This is the life insurance component. The number 2 thing is that it provides you savings, right? So it allows you to grow your money safely and consistently. All the money that you're growing is going to be earning interest, and it's going to be growing in a compounded way. And number 3, the same money is what's going to allow you to borrow from yourself so that you can basically no longer need a bank down the road. So that's the goal. Okay, so let's see how this works in concept. So again, think of this green box as your income. From here, you're going to put at least 10% into this blue box, which is your savings account, and you're going to leave the other 90% into your bank checking account, right? From the savings account, you're going to transfer this money into your Banking Yourself or your Wealth Heritage account. Once it's in there, your protection is going to go up. Now, once it's there, you're going to borrow the money back out. Typically, you can borrow about 80 to 90% of the money that you put into these accounts. And once you borrow that money, you're going to use that money that you just borrowed from yourself in order to pay your debt down faster, right? You're going to pay down your debt faster every month. So from the money that you put into the red account, the checking account, you're going to make your normal minimum payments or whatever that you've been doing. But from this blue account and from this orange account, you're going to take this money and you're going to use it to pay down your debt faster so that you can get out. Now, there's a trick here. There's a concept, key concept. You have to focus basically on one debt at a time, only one debt. And here's why. You know, it's kind of works like laser, right? If you spread out a bunch of rays of light everywhere, you're not going to accomplish anything. But if you focus everything into one thing, it's going to become like a laser, right, that burns right through. So if you want to burn your debts basically to zero, you have to concentrate on getting rid of one debt. I typically recommend people focus on the smallest debt so that they can feel a sense of confidence and they can feel a sense of achievement, by getting rid of that one debt first. Okay, so if you pick a credit card, for example, let's say you have $500, $1,000, balance, and if you can use this money that you're borrowing, they're called policy loans. If you borrow this money from yourself and you use it to get rid of this one credit card, what's going to happen is that now you're going to free up the amount of money that was going towards that credit card. So now you're going to have extra money that you can basically put into savings so that you can grow your own bank a little bit more, right? Then you're going to focus on the second credit card. And once you focus on that second credit card and get rid of that credit card, you're going to focus on the third until there's no more credit cards. Once you get rid of the credit cards, you can then focus, for example, on your car loans, right? And you work on those loans until those loans are gone. And then you focus on the next thing. Maybe it's your student loans. So then you focus on your student loans until your student loans are gone. And lastly, you focus on your mortgage, right? And you're going to keep paying your mortgage at an accelerated rate until your mortgage is gone. Now, obviously, this isn't going to happen in one day or in 1 month. It might take a few years. But the good news is that as you make progress paying your debts off, you're going to feel pretty successful and you're going to feel pretty excited. Okay, so what happens now? Once you finish paying off your debts, you're basically going to be debt-free at that point, right? And so what you do now is now you have to basically, all the money that you were using from this red checking account that you were using towards these minimum payments, you can now use that money to pay yourself back, right? So you're going to repay all these policy loans so that the money is back in your own bank so that you can use it again in the future towards whatever the next thing is. Okay, so let's kind of review what happens. Number one, when you set up this account, you're going to initially provide an initial protection for your family. As you start putting money into this account, your savings is going to grow consistently and constantly, and it's going to start to pay you dividends and interest every year. You then are going to be able to borrow the money back out that you put in so that basically you can use it to repay your bank's loans much faster and so that you can cut off the interest that you were paying to these banks. And number four, as you get rid of this debt, right, you're going to accelerate this process until you're completely debt-free. And number five, the account that you set up, which we're calling your Wealth Heritage or your Banking Yourself account, is going to replace your need to use a bank, right? At some point, you're going to basically rely on this account in order to help you pay things off rather than going and borrowing again from a bank. So let's kind of review. Every month, as you put money into this Wealth Heritage account, what's going to happen? Your protection is going to go up, the amount of savings is going to go up, and your ability to borrow money, right, what we're calling a line of credit, is also going to go up. If you do this month after month, year after year, you're going to see how this account grows and grows and grows and can become a source of financial freedom for you. Okay, before we go on, let me just make sure that I don't have any questions here. So let me just go back and check something real quick. Give me 1 second. Okay, I think everything looks fine. Okay, great. Let me go back and share my screen again. Okay, presentation number 3. All right, so now let me explain to you why life insurance can be a wonderful tool if you learn how to use it properly, and how you can tell whether you have the right life insurance or not. So let's talk a little bit about what is life insurance, right? For most people, life insurance is probably not something that they think about every day, and it's probably not something that most people know how to use as to serve as the substitute for your bank. So let me tell you first that the cost of a life insurance policy depends on 3 things, right? The 3 factors are your age, your health, and your sex. Actually, men pay more than women, younger people pay less than older people, and healthy people pay less than, people who smoke and so forth. Okay, so what is the point of having life insurance? So the point of having life insurance, first of all, is to protect your family in case something happens to you, right? Let's say that you're driving to work, you're in a car accident, something happens. Well, who's going to pay for your funeral expense? Who's going to pay your mortgage, right? Who's going to pay for your kids' college now if you're gone? So the whole point is to have something that your family can fall back on, right? But number two, that only happens when you die. But while you're alive, you can actually use the money that you're sending in order to replace the need for borrowing from banks. And that's what this class is about, right? Is to teach you how you can do that. And you can also replace the need to have a retirement account that's subject to the volatility of the stock market by basically having your own retirement account in the form of a bank on yourself account, where it is basically growing in a stable manner year after year and not subject to all this volatility, and where you can have access to your money tax-free whenever you want without any penalties and without having to beg or ask anybody for your money. It's also going to be protected in case of lawsuits. So, basically people think about life insurance sometimes as something negative, like, oh my God, I'm going to have to die. Well, no, think of it as a gift of love, right? In case something happens to you, your family's going to be well taken care of. Now, there's 4 parties to every life insurance contract. There's the policy owner, so that's the person who actually signs and buys the policy and pays for it. There's the insured, right? That's the person that in case they pass away, that's the person that is being insured. And then there's the beneficiary. The beneficiary is the person who's going to receive the money. In this case, it might be your wife, your kids, your parents, somebody who's going to receive the money in case you pass away. And obviously, there's the insurance company who kind of allows all this to happen. So if we look at a graph, this is kind of what it looks like. You have an insurance company who creates an insurance policy. You have a person who's called the policy holder or the owner. He's the one who's going to take out this insurance policy. The insured person is the person who's going to basically guarantee this life insurance policy. And it obviously has to be a healthy person. It has to be a person that, doesn't have cancer or something like that. It's not somebody who's going to die right away. It's somebody who's going to be able to be around for a long time. So you have to pass a health exam. And then you have the beneficiary, which could be your children, who's going to receive the money in case the insured person passes away. Now, there's 4 components that we need to kind of think about. Number 1 is the premium. These are just kind of language that you need to learn. So premium basically means the amount of money that you're paying every month, right? That's like the payment or the cost of the insurance every month. The death benefit is the amount of money that your loved one, whoever you insured, is going to receive. The cash value is the amount of money that if you were to cancel your policy today, the insurance company would give you back, right? It's the amount of money that you can borrow in order to use it while you're alive. And the dividends, basically think of those as kind of the company profit that each year that life insurance is going to put back into your policy as it's growing, right? Who can you insure? Well, you can only insure somebody that is typically within your family, right? It's called having an insurable interest. You can't insure people that you hate, right? In case something bad were to happen to them, you can't go collect money. Basically, it has to be somebody that you really care about. Could be your spouse, could be your children, could be your parents, something like that. So there's basically 4 types of life insurance that you can buy. There's what's called term life insurance, which is kind of the typical one that most people get. You typically rent a policy like this for somewhere between 10 to 30 years, and it's a really low cost. The problem is that it doesn't have any cash value, right? The second type of insurance is called whole life insurance. This one's pretty expensive. So it's good in a sense, but it can be very expensive and prohibitive for most people. And usually it doesn't have much cash value in the first few years, so it kind of defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. And then there's something called universal life insurance, which has become pretty popular these days. but we don't really recommend that you use that, and we'll explain why a little bit later. But the basic fundamental reason is because the money is invested in the stock market, which defeats the purpose of having money that's supposed to be safe. And then lastly, there's the kind of insurance that we are sharing with you here, which is basically a concept that makes us the first two components. It has aspects of a whole life, it has aspects of a term life, but it has some third component that we're going to talk about called paid up additions, which is what's really going to make things work out. Right now, you might be thinking, geez, that's a lot of buzzwords. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, don't worry about it. It will become clear here in just a minute. So let's talk about term life insurance so we understand how that works. So term life insurance basically has a low cost. So for example here, let's say that I wanted to insure myself for $200,000, right? $200,000 is the death benefit. So if over the next 20 years, something were to happen to me, as long as I pay this premium of $38 a month or $457 a year, my family would be guaranteed to receive $200,000. This is the typical type of life insurance that most people have, right? The problem with life insurance like this is that it only offers you a specific death benefit for a period of time, and if you don't use it, it goes to zero, right? It has no cash value, it pays no dividends, and if we go back to this chart, look at what happens when you reach, let's say this is a 20-year product. What happens in year 21 after this product expires? If you want to renew it for one more year, it becomes really expensive. It costs almost 10 times as much to pay for one more year of coverage at that point in time. So most people usually just cancel it because there's no point in keeping around an expensive policy, right? The second type of life insurance is something that's called whole life insurance. So whole life insurance is, like I said, something that does pay you a dividend and does have cash value, but it can be more expensive. For example, here, to have a $100,000 whole life policy would cost $196 a month or $2,355 a year. Right, the benefit is that it does have some cash value which stays with you over time. And so if you look at it over time, the cash value does grow a little bit, initially not much in the initial years, but it does grow over time. The death benefit also grows a little bit over time, and they do pay you dividends, right, a little bit over time. The other good thing about a whole life policy is that the premiums are fixed, but as I said, they can be usually pretty high. I mentioned that there's a third type of life insurance called Index Universal Life. I really recommend that you stay away from this. And let me just briefly explain why. A lot of people that I've met, buy this type of insurance. The problem is that usually what happens is, yeah, you have some protection, but if you die sometime, after 65 years old, your protection can actually go to zero, right? And so all the money that you paid into this could actually be lost. And so these products are not that great, even though a lot of people buy them, but they just don't understand how they work. Now, the fourth concept, Bank on Yourself, is based off of a book that I recommend that you get by Nelson Nash. If you've never heard of this gentleman, he's the one who invented this concept called infinite banking or become your own banker. So you can get this book from Amazon, or you can get this book from his website, which is called infinitebanking.org. And I recommend that you get it and that you read it a few times because it's really going to help this concept sink in. But basically, all he's saying is that if you get a life insurance policy, you put money into it for the first few years, and you start borrowing the money back out of this to replace your bank, over the course of time, you can become your own bank, and you will never need banks again. And basically, all the money that you've been paying to those banks would then basically go back into your own pocket. And so that's the concept, right? And so I want to basically start walking you through an example so that you can see how this works. The Bank on Yourself is going to have three components, right? It's going to have a small whole life component. It's going to have a term life component. And the biggest component over time is going to become the PUA insurance. Now, What I want to talk about PUA stands for Paid Up Additional Insurance. This is an insurance component that is optional. It's not mandatory, but it's basically the magic sauce to this whole component. So this, when you blend these three components together into one policy, it actually acts like the way I described it before. It acts like life insurance, it acts as a savings plan, and it also acts as a line of credit, right? The insurance company allows you to borrow back the money that you're putting into the savings part of the plan, while the protection for your family, it grows over time. So, for example, I'm going to show you here an example of one of my clients where she got a whole life policy that is $50,000, right? And the cost to her is $38 a month. The term life component is $150,000, and that's $1,874 a month. And her paid up insurance allows her to put in a maximum of $3,400 a month for $283 a month. And for every dollar that she puts in, she gets approximately $7 of extra protection for every dollar she puts in. She's not obligated to put this money in, right? This is completely optional. But the reason that she wants to do that is because the insurance company will allow her to get roughly about 7 times more protection for every dollar that she puts in, right? So if she puts in $3,000 times 7, that would be about $21,000 of protection a year that she could be putting in towards her family. And the majority of the money that she puts in, she'll be able to borrow it back out, right? So when we compare these three policies, you can see here that the term, which is the red line, the whole life, which is the blue line, just doesn't even compare to the black line, which is the whole life, bank on yourself, whole life policy, right, when you combine all three. Now, you might still be a little confused, and that's okay. I want to show you with an example, specific example, how this is going to work. So let's jump into this example. My client's name, I'm going to call her Annie. And when I met her 2 years ago, she was 24. She was a single college graduate, right? She had just gotten her first job, and she really wanted to do something with her life. She wanted to get her finances straight. At the time I met her, she took my course called Financial Freedom, and she started attending another class that I was giving at that time called University of Success. And she learned about how to become your own bank. And so we met, and she got a policy 2 years ago that started in February 2018. This policy basically had a $50,000 whole life policy plus $150,000 of 30-year term, right? So to start off with, her policy had $200,000 of death benefit. And her premium, as I was saying before, was $58 a month. $58 a month was for the base and the term. That's the only thing that she was obligated to pay, was $58 a month. She had the option to put in an extra money towards the PUA, or the paid up addition. And so initially she was putting in $150 a month. The most she could put in per year was $3,400 a year. Now, when I met Annie, she actually had some debts. She had a car that she owed $325 a month. She had some furniture where she owed $50 a month. Basically, after we met, what we did was we put together a plan for her to start paying off her debts. And a year later, she was debt-free from those debts, right? So once she finishes paying off those debts, she now basically would have $375 a month, right, available to her that she didn't have before. Now, when we met a year later, she still had $2,340 that she owed on a credit card. She owed money on another credit card, and she owed money on a third credit card, right? However, by this time, she had $1,000 in her savings account in her bank, and she also had been putting money away into her bank and herself, such that she had the ability to borrow money from her account. I want to show you that account right now So give me just 1 second to pull it open here. Give me just 1 second and I will open it so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so let's see. I'm sorry, I'm getting open. Give me 1 second. Okay. So one of the things that we do, okay. One of the things that we do, give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm gonna open this. So one of the things that we do is that if you notice here, this policy had, sorry, this policy had $50,000 of face or whole life insurance to begin with. This policy had 30-year term rider, $150,000, right? And so she started off with $200,000 of death benefit to begin with. Like I said, she was putting in $58 a month towards this account, and she was putting in $150 of extra money towards her paid up addition. I hope you can kind of see it down here at the bottom. 58 and 150. So she was putting in this optional money, 150, on top of her minimum payment. Now, I want you to pay attention to this line here. What happens as she puts money, this $150 every month, right? In month one, she got $1,132 of additional insurance. Month two, she's put in $300. Her insurance has now gone up by $2,270. Now she's got $202,270 of protection. In month three, it's gone up to $3,394, right, of extra protection. So as you can see, every month, the amount of protection that she has is going up and up and up, right? It's going up. Okay, so how much does she have at the end of 2018? At the end of 2018, she had $211,000. So basically in 1 year, by putting money, extra money into her policy, right? How much extra money? $1,500. Her policy had gone up by $11,000 of extra protection. So that's basically about 7 times more money. In fact, let me calculate it right here, which I should have had that already. 7.46 times, right? That's the amount of extra insurance that she has. Okay, now, at the end of the second year, how much insurance does she have? She has basically $28,000 of extra insurance, right? And so, as you can see, one of the benefits of this type of insurance is that your insurance doesn't stay at a flat amount. It actually grows over time. The other benefit is that she is now able to borrow some of the money that she's putting in, right? Initially, out of that extra money that she put in, let me put it up here again, right? Out of this $300 that she's put in, she could have borrowed, if she wanted to, this amount right here. I'm going to paint this amount just so that you can see it a little bit closer. I'm going to paint it in, let's paint it in green. All right, I hope you can see it. In fact, I'll probably pick a different color of green so that you can see what I'm talking about. All right. And over here, I'm going to put the amount of money that she's putting in I'll pick a different color. Let's pick blue. Okay. So every month she's putting extra money, which is causing her death benefit to go up. But the insurance company says, okay, if you'd like to borrow some money, I'll lend you $353. Here, I'll lend you $493, and so forth, right? So after a year, after year one, she's put in, she's put in $1,500, right, of additional money, and she is now able to borrow $1,366. How much is $1,366 divided by 1,500? Well, if we look at it here, it is, give me 1 second, 1,366 divided by 1,500, here it is, 91%. So 91% of the money that she's put in, she is allowed to take back out as a loan if she wants to. Now, let's go through time here to see what she did. After we met, basically, she still owed some money on those credit cards, right? And if we go back to the presentation, let's look and see how much those credit cards were costing her, right? One of them was costing her 15%. The other one was costing her 11%. Now, think about this, right? She had $1,000 in her savings account, and by the time we met, she was able to borrow $1,900 from her credit card, from her Bank on Yourself account, right? So what can she do? Well, she can use this money basically to pay this one off, almost most of it, right? She can use this money to put it into her Bank on Yourself and then take it back out and start paying on this one, right? So the plan that we came up with was that if you can continue, and she now has $375 a month that she can basically start putting in through her Bank on Yourself account, right, to make her protection grow. So if we look at what she actually did, was she started putting money in, and in effect, she decided to borrow $1,900 out that month, I mean. She also put in the extra $1,000 that I advised her to do, and she was able to immediately take it back out, right? So she's now borrowed $2,900. And so by doing so, look at what's happened to her protection, right? By putting in that extra $1,000 that she had in the savings account, her protection went up from $14,876 to $23,164, and she was able to basically borrow that money back out in order to pay off her debts faster with the bank, right? And so if you notice, this went down from $1,900 because she took it all out, but every month, since she's putting money still into her policy, she's able to borrow money back out. Now, what happens when you borrow money out? What happens to your protection? Do you lose that 7-to-1 benefit? No, not at all. In fact, it only goes down by the same amount that you borrow, right? So if you look at where she is today, let's fast forward to today. Right now, my client has death benefit of $237, basically minus right now she owes on her Bank on Yourself $4,300 to herself, but her net death benefit right now is $232. So basically, if you think about it, she has $237,000 when she started off with $200. She's borrowed $4,300 out in order to pay off her credit cards, so that she doesn't have to be paying 15% interest on those credit cards, right? The cost of borrowing from yourself is basically about 2%. Why 2%? because the insurance company charges you 5%, but they also pay you about 3 to 4% every year in the form of dividends and interest that they're paying on your account. So let's go back to this example so that we can see what's happened with her over time. So when we met a year ago, basically I helped her, like, you know, with her debt freedom plan. We decided that she was going to take the $1,000 that she had in savings and put it into the paid up addition. She then borrowed, like I said, she was going to borrow money to pay off her credit card. She was going to use the $375 extra that she was no longer spending from the debts she had paid off earlier in order to become debt free faster. And the goal was that she was going to become debt free in 7 months, which she did. She then was going to pay herself back in 4 months, and she was going to have extra money in her policy. So when we met recently, about a couple weeks ago, she is now debt free. She no longer has any credit cards. She no longer has any car loan. She no longer has any bank loans, right? And she's learned how to become her own bank. Then she started saving $1,000 towards the down payment of a home, which she found. So basically, she recently became, to give you an update of what's happened to Annie since we met last time. She went on a Success Conference cruise with us in 2018, was able to bring her mom along to go visit some exotic places that we go to every year. She's able to pay off her debts, right, following the plan that we set out for her. And she was able to learn how to become her own bank. And she saved towards the down payment of her house. She just bought the house last month, so now she's a proud homeowner. And her death benefit is now significantly higher, 19% higher than where she started off 2 years ago, right? But the difference between this client and lots of other people is that she basically has followed, you know, step by step everything that I've been teaching her. And in fact, I was very proud when she told me that when she met with her banker to borrow money for her house, that he was just pretty shocked. How is it that a 26-year-old is able to have no debts, no credit cards, no student loans, right, and have savings towards a home and have a life insurance policy, right? My client just had a baby. Congratulations to her. And now that baby has protection, right? In case something ever happens to my client, that baby's now going to have, you know, $237,000 basically towards college. Now, I want to show you something so that you can kind of see what happens in this scenario to this policy. Okay, so I want to show you this, which is a projection of what my client would get right over time if she keeps this policy going the way it's designed. Okay, so I told you that initially, like, the goal was to pay the minimum plus the $3,400 a year, right? If she's able to do that year after year after year, if you see this value here, cumulative premium, this is going to show you how much money she would be putting into the policy. If you look at this column here, net cash value, this shows you how much cash she would accumulate over time. This death benefit is a projection of how much the death benefit will grow year after year after year, right? So after 5 years, just so you follow along, she would have put almost $4,100 a year, which is a total of $20,000, right? She would be able to borrow $18,000 of that money, and her policy, which started at $200, would have grown by $319,000, right, at the end of 5 years. At the end of 10 years, her premium that she's paid in would be almost $41,000. her cash value that she can use to borrow back out would be more than what she's put in, would be $42,800, and her death benefit would be now more than twice as large as what she started off with, right? She started off with $200,000. Now it would be about $425,000. Now imagine this, right? My client was 24 when she got this policy. Let's see what happens 20 years later. 20 years later, she's put in $81,000 into her policy, right? She would have cash value of $110,000, and her death benefit would now grow to $600,000. Okay, let's look at it 30 years from now. So 30 years from now, she's put in $122,945. That money would have grown to $211,000. And if you notice, the growth rate here every single year is always positive, right? It's not going up and down on the stock market because this money is not invested in the stock market. Her protection would grow to $759,268. Now, what happens in year 31? In year 30, basically her term policy, which was $150, goes away after it expires. So this would drop down by $150, but notice in the next year, it didn't drop down to $600, right? She now has $624 and so forth. And from this point on, all of this death benefit would become permanent to her. So let's keep fast forwarding, and let's say that my client now turns 70 years old, right? At 70 years old, how much money has she put into this policy over her lifetime? $157,000, all because she's basically learned how to pay herself first and has developed a habit of consistently putting money into this policy. How much cash value would she have after 30 years of doing this over and over again? 40 years, I'm sorry. 45 years, my apologies. She would have $443,000, right? Nearly 3 times the amount of money she's put in, all through basically the magical power of the compounding interest, right? And she would have, her daughter would have, if something happened to her at that age, almost $800,000 of permanent life insurance death benefit. Now, let's say that my client lives to be a little bit older than that. And let's say eventually, I don't know, she reaches the age of 91 years old, right? At 91 years old, my client would have put in $166,955 over her lifetime. She would basically, that money would have grown to be $844,000, and her death benefit would now be in excess of $1 million. Now, how is that possible? It's possible simply because you follow a plan. It's possible because the insurance company puts the money to work in safe, steady investments on behalf of their clients, right? And it's possible simply because you learn how to become your own bank. Instead of putting all that money going towards debts, by learning how to get rid of your debts early on, you can save a lot of money, and then you can put the money away into this plan so that it starts to work for you, instead of you consistently always working for the banks or for, or risking your money in the stock market. All right, so hopefully you have found this presentation to be helpful. I just want to share my contact information here with you before we go to Q&A in case there's any questions. So, what are the benefits of using this strategy? So the benefit is your death benefit goes up over time, right? The amount of money that you contribute goes towards savings, which then allows you to borrow it back out so that you can get rid of your debts faster. And your protection goes up year after year, right? The money is invested safely. A lot of people ask, well, how do I get this money, right? It's not like I have that much left. You have to start off basically by educating yourself more on this concept. Like I said, buy these books, right? Buy education. That's the best thing you can do, is invest in yourself. Get a copy of this book, Becoming Your Own Banker. Get a copy of this book, The Bank on Yourself Revolution, right? We're authorized to work with Bank on Yourself, and we can help you. But the first thing you need to do is to have the desire, right, to understand this concept. I congratulate you for being here with me in this presentation. I apologize about all the technical difficulties we had. And the next thing you have to do is make a decision, right? If this is of interest to you, you know, and you want to work with us, we're happy to help you out. We're happy to be your personal coach, and we can walk you step by step, right? The goal here is to take back control over your life, take back control over your money so that you can prosper. If you'd like to schedule a one-on-one meeting with me, you know, you can call this number. I'm sorry, this number is not correct. Let me get the latest. Okay, I hope you can hear me again. Sorry, I lost the audio there for a second. My apologies, because it hasn't been my day as far as technology. So anyways, I was saying that if you would like to set up a one-on-one, feel free to call this number, 915-504-4225, or email us at seminars@financial-freedom.org to request a one-on-one. Okay, I'd like to basically take some time now to see if there's any questions that you guys might have. I'm going to unmute the lines so that if you guys have any questions and you want to either send them in through the chat box, or you want to just ask directly over the phone, I'd be happy to try to answer your questions at this time. So if there's any questions, I would love to do my best to answer them at this time.
I do have a question. This is Carla.
Yes. Hi, Carla.
Why do you not recommend the universal? You said you were gonna explain why you don't recommend the universal life insurance policy.
Yes. So the universal life insurance policy has a number of flaws and issues with it. So let me go to the presentation where I have that. Give me 1 second. In a nutshell, basically universal life insurance policies are not invested in the stock market and not invested in bonds, which makes them a more risky concept. So what happens is you have to kind of think about your money in two different buckets. You have to think of your money as in safe money and in, I guess, money that you can afford to risk. So if you want to invest in the stock market, then you should invest in the stock market. But money that you put into life insurance should not be at risk, right? The whole goal is that your money should be there when you want it. And so what happens is when you look at when you read the fine print and you read the language in the IULs, they basically tell you, well, assume that the stock market is going to grow 7%. And if the stock market grows 7%, this illustration is going to look wonderful, right? But if you read the fine print, they're always going to say, well, the guaranteed amount is actually more like less than 1%. And if that happens, and if you look at the illustrations after several years, you're going to realize that if you die past the age of 65, most of the time the cash value is pretty much zero, and there's nothing guaranteed for you to be there. And so you might end up losing your death benefit and your cash value. And if you get to be old enough, you might actually have to be required to pay extra money. So I always caution people, you have to kind of read the fine print so that you know what you're buying. If you happen to have one of these policies, I'd be happy to meet with you and go over it with you so that you can see what I'm talking about. The good news is that you can actually switch out of it through what's called a 1035 exchange. And I can show you, how to do that and basically put you on something that's much safer and that's going to work for you long term. I don't know if that answered your question, but I'm hoping that it does. I always try to explain to people, my goal is not to bash something, but it is to alert people that, not everything is what it seems to be. So I know a lot of times people have good intentions when they sell these things, but at the end of the day, they don't perform the same. Did that answer your question, or do you have any other questions? Okay. Anybody else?
This is Abraham. I have a quick question. On your example for Annie, the cash value was increasing. I would probably, this is a dumb question, but can we use that cash value money to buy something that we want? For example, invest in a house or something else?
I'm sorry, you can use the money for what?
For the things that I don't know, for example, invest in real estate.
Yes, you can use it for anything you want because the cash value is yours to control, right? So as long as you have cash value that you've been putting in there, if you find an opportunity to use that money that you think is good, you can just basically borrow it. Usually it takes the insurance company about 2-3 days from the time you tell them that you need the money, and they put it into your bank account. Think about, like, let's say that you found this piece of real estate that you're talking about, right? What are your alternatives to go buy it? Well, if you have cash, you could use that. If you don't have cash, you wanted to borrow money from a bank, how much time is it going to take the bank to provide you the money, right? It might take them a few weeks. They're probably going to ask you for your, to prove how much money you make. They're going to ask you for your credit score. They're going to ask you, to sign some documents basically saying that you guarantee you're going to pay this money back, et cetera, et cetera. And it's going to take you weeks to get that money, right? What if it's a home that you needed to purchase, at an auction? You might not have weeks. Whereas if you borrow the money from your bank on your self account, like I said, they're not going to ask you any questions what you need the money for, and you're going to have the money ready probably within a couple days, 2-3 days, it's going to be in your bank account. And so it's a much more convenient way to borrow the money. And like I said, the cost of the money is actually pretty low. The insurance company will charge you 5%. The reason they charge you that money is because that's what they would have made had they invested the money elsewhere. and not giving it to you. So if you think that you can make more than 5%, in fact, it's actually more than 2 or 3%, because they're already paying you the dividends and the interest. It's to your benefit to borrow the money from there because it's going to be cheaper. The other thing that I didn't mention is that when you borrow money from an insurance company in the way of policy loans, you're not required to make monthly payments the way you are with the bank. So it's much more flexible. So for example, let's say you buy this piece of real estate that you're asking about, and let's say that for a whole year you don't want to make any payments. That's perfectly fine. You don't have to make any payments. Maybe you're going to use this property, fix it up, wait till you have a tenant, rent it out or flip it, you know. Basically, you're not required to make monthly payments to the bank in your self account. You just decide when it's best for you to make those payments back. So it's very flexible. I hope that answered your question. Anything else?
And are we required to repay the whole amount of money that we take out on the loan?
You're not, quote, required to pay it. It's in your best interest to pay it because that way the money is available for you in the future for something else. But at the end of the day, you know, the company is going to basically charge you for that money out of your death benefit. So in the worst extreme scenario where you never pay it back, let's say you pass away and you had a death benefit of $1 million, but let's say you still owe $200,000. Your family is going to get $800,000, right? The $1 million minus the $200,000 that you still owe on that policy loan. So that's where the money would get paid out of from your death benefit in the worst case scenario that you never gave it back before that.
Okay, perfect. That answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions? Anybody else? Any other questions? All right, well, I'm going to just put up my contact information one last time so that if any of you would like to answer, you know, ask any more one-on-ones, or you want to just meet up and do like a customized example for yourself and see what that would look like, you know, contact my assistant, Anna. She'll help you get set up. Again, you can use that email, seminars@financial-freedom.org, or the number is 915-504-4225. Let me see, I think another question maybe just came in. Is that right? Let's see, when would it be too late to get started? It's never too late to get started. I mean, I think they're able to insure people well into their 70s. So to me, the sooner you can do it, the better, because the mathematics works better in your case. For example, right now I showed you the case of a 24-year-old who got to pay very little, and for every dollar she puts in, she gets a 7 times benefit. If you're already in your 40s, you're not going to get $7 for every dollar you put in. Maybe you get $4 for every dollar you put in. But if you wait till you're 60, maybe it might be $2 for every dollar you put in. There's still a benefit, you know, but it's better if you start off when you're younger, for those 2 reasons, because the cost is cheaper and it never goes up. It's guaranteed to always stay the same. And the death benefit that you get for every incremental dollar you put in is much higher when you open these policies when you're really young. But in a nutshell, it's never too late. I think if you're at past 85 or something like that, they won't insure you. But other than that, I would say it's never too late. Any other questions? Anything else? Anybody else? Going once, going twice. All right. If there's no other questions, I want to thank you for your time today. Thanks for your patience. Apologies again. And let us know if we can be of help. Send us an email. All right. Enjoy your evening. God bless, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.